This video today is going to be the part 3 in really which is a series of American fork in the road. I did 2 videos on already. The first was the fork in the road. The second was really the Delancey Mac split. And this one is going to be a more hands-on approach. It's how to treat different canes and different gouges. Hard cane, hard setup versus soft cane, weaker setup. And this is really the culmination of the series. And this one's going to be designed to show you how you need to scrape the reed in order to get it to work and respond the way you'd like it to. Because there's really 2 approaches to this. It's governed by a simple rule, which I'm going to try to show you today. And that rule, which is a rule of thumb, general rule, is the harder the cane, the stronger the gouge, the stronger the setup, the more defined the reed has to be, and the more definition further back in the reed. The beginning of the tip needs to be more defined, and the very back of the reed needs to be more defined. Conversely, the weaker the cane, the weaker the setup or the gouge, the less the cane needs to be defined, the more blended the reed needs to be toward the front. The tip, the corners of the tip can be thinner with a weaker gouge and a weaker setup. It can be much thinner. And there's more of a blending approach through the blend area from the tip to the heart. And the back is scraped not way in the back, but more to the back of the heart. The reason for this is that harder canes and stronger setups, they don't want to vibrate, you see, and you have to make them vibrate. And the way to do that is to scrape further in the back of the reed and further at the beginning of the tip. The thing is, with either setup, you really cannot combine them. And I know I said this before, but when you go with one way of making the reed, it's difficult to then switch and try to do it a different way. I think people run into trouble when they try to combine 2 different elements for 2 different setups and they're not compatible. Okay, so we're going to try this with the hard piece of cane so that give you an idea of what it means. The easiest way, quickest way to find out is just scrape the end of it and see if it vibrates. Right? When you clip the end, does it move? What is it doing? And sometimes you scrape reeds like this and you separate it and it's just going like madness. It vibrates like crazy. But this, I'm not sure this will move at all. It's very hard. And we'll see if it vibrates. No, it's not moving at all. So let's remove some from the very hard cane. It doesn't want to move. Yeah. It should move a little bit, but it's not moving at all. With some pieces of cane, that would vibrate a lot, but this one is, I mean, it doesn't want to move, and I'm blowing hard, and it just doesn't. Now, one of the things you can do is clip the end and make it even, and that might help. But it's still very resistant. So I'm going to go in the back, and this is how we make reeds like this work. Hard cane. There's really 2 ways, and that is, some people like to scrape down the center, toward the center of the cane, right? The center of the reed, which weakens the spine, weakens the center. But I tend to start from the back, and I will begin the back and have a real clear definition, and not move toward the front, just staying with the back. And do the other side about the same amount. And it's just the beginning of the back, right? Because it'll weaken it a bit, and it will get it to settle down. Let's see if that did anything. You can see the profile a little bit. Yeah, it did. It got it to move a little bit more. So I'm going to do a little bit more with that before I go to the tip. And this is really how you get hard cane to move. You got to scrape the back because there's just too much material. I mean, that's if you want the whole reed to move. But I think this works for most styles. If you scrape the end and it's not vibrating, you have to remove from the back. The gouge is too strong or too heavy. And this is the only way to get it to move. Or one of the ways is to define the back. Now we're going to work on the tip. Yeah, and so it's moving a little better, and I think if we define the tip a little more, we'll get that also. So let me try it with the tip. And we are going to define, like most of my videos, where it's really a definition, yeah? So you're really plucking away here. Right? And then define the tip. And when you start from the back of the tip, you can move the material off. And that does help with the tone. You can see it kind of dips down there because of its definition. But it should work. You can see how defined it is. It's looking very defined. A lot out of the back. And this is what makes it move. So that reed is vibrating now. So that's pretty close to what I'm talking about. Tip's a little long, but it's very defined. Now I've done this in other reeds where you move the back up gradually so to meet the front, and that helps with the tonal qualities and the way it vibrates. So we'll move this back up a little bit. It's kind of blended into the back of the heart, right? And then let's try it. Yeah, that's better. So it plays pretty well. You can hear, that it's a decent reed. But that's how we get it to move. And that's how we balance it. And I've shown this in other videos. Tip's kind of long, but it's okay. It plays. I could try to refine it, although it would be better to refine it tomorrow. But I'll tell you what, we'll just move this up a little bit. I'll try redefining the corners of the tip. And this is where I emphasize it's important to, when you're doing this, to define the tip like right in this area, right? And this is where you start. This is where you start your tip. If I start scraping the corners like this, that's going to ruin the reed. I guarantee it. But if you start in this area and you scrape forward, you'll be fine. And this is the difference. between the hard setup and the weaker setup. So let's try this again. It plays fine, right? It plays good. Let's see. Now, one way to ruin this reed, and I'll try it. Now that it plays decent. I just took some off the heart, so that helps. Okay, so this is the reed from the hard cane perspective. It's important to define the reed from the heart and define the back of the reed in order to get it to vibrate, because it just doesn't want to vibrate. The way to ruin the reed is to scrape the very tip. This is how you ruin a hard cane reed. Now I'm going to do it just to prove a point. I'm going to scrape right in the tip, right in the corners of the tip. And let me show you what I mean. So now I could do this with weak cane. I could stay on this tip and just scrape away and it'll work fine. But when you do this with hard cane, it's going to shut the reed down. The reed's not going to vibrate. It doesn't like it. Alright, now let's try it. Now the problem is it's very resistant. I've created a lot of resistance in this reed. If I were to clip this reed now that I've shaved the corners so thin, it would not vibrate. So I'm going to clip it to show you what I mean. Now I'm clipping it just a little bit. Now it's not crowing, the low part's not crowing. This reed is ruined. You can't scrape the corners of the tip really thin with hard cane. It doesn't work. Hard cane, strong gouges, you can't go after the corners of the tip or the very end of the tip. If I were to scrape the very end of the tip, it would be even worse. You have to stay toward the back of the tip, toward the back of the reed in order to get it to vibrate. So now that's the hard reed. Let's do a soft reed. This is a soft piece of cane and it's a little different. You want to approach it a little differently. So let's see if it vibrates when we scrape the end of it. You recall the hard piece of cane didn't do anything. I mean, I was blowing pretty hard and it wouldn't move. The gouge is the same for both. It's my gouge. It's just the cane is different. The shape is the same. And the shape is a prototype shape that I've worked on. I only have one, but I'll have more this fall, I think. It's really quite a nice shape. You can already kind of tell the stuff is a little softer. It comes off a little differently. And when you scrape the end of it, it responds. Yeah, it moves. I'm not pushing that much air and it's moving. Heart region, similar to the way we did it with the hard stuff. And I'm really trying to work quickly but not damage the reed, because I would like to make quicker videos, but it just becomes impossible. You get to a certain point and that's about as fast as I can go. It's really vibrating quite a bit. And I just removed from the tip and the heart. Now the last reed over here didn't vibrate at all, hardly. But this one's moving quite a bit. So as you can tell, if the cane is a little weaker or the gouge is a little freer, not as strong, I'll go back here and we'll see that, having gone in the back, that it will really make it vibrate quite a bit without removing a lot out of the back. Because if we know it vibrates a lot, you don't want to remove a lot out of the back. You'll get in trouble. Yeah, I mean, this reed's just vibrating tremendously. And I haven't hardly done anything to it. The cane is much softer. It wants to vibrate. We have to treat this reed a little differently because it does vibrate. You remember how with the last reed I went way in the back here and I was really digging away to loosen up the rest of the reed because the rest of the reed didn't want to move. But this reed doesn't need it because it's vibrating so well. You also remember how the last reed with the hard, we wanted to define it right in here also to get this to vibrate a lot. Not with this reed. This reed's moving quite a bit. We're not going to do that. We are going to start from the tip and work backwards. With this kind of reed, this is how we do it. We start from the tip and go back. Not from the back, forward. And this is the difference between hard cane, strong gouges, strong setup, and soft cane, weaker gouges, softer setups. Now don't think of weakness as an inferior, it's just more vibration. As we noticed right away, this reed wanted to vibrate quite a bit. So this is how we do this. Now you also remember when I was working with the hard cane, if I scrape the end of the tip like this, the corners of the tip, it just ruined the reed. The reed stopped working, and then when I clipped it, it became impossible to play. Hard cane, strong gouge, that kind of American Macish school, can't do that. You got to stay away from the end of the tip. There are areas that you can scrape, but this isn't one of them in the tip. And that's where a lot of people get in trouble. With this, though, I'm actually going to free up the reed quite a bit. And it's more blended, you see. This is more blending what I'm doing here. I'm not starting from here and just drilling away. I'm blending the front with what's slightly behind it. Okay, a little more blending. See that? A little more blending. This is how you want to do it. When the last hard cane and so on, I started back here, you want to avoid this. You want to avoid defining this because that'll really weaken the reed and it will not function well if you do that. This is what we have. It's a little more blended. The cane is definitely softer, a little weaker, and wants to vibrate more. This is how we have to do it. For tone, the back, you want to scrape with this style reed. You don't want to go far back here. Not a good idea. You stay right behind the heart. And what this does is it helps with the tone of the reed. Yeah. This reed is a freer reed, responds better, has a more even tone, but is slightly more dependent on the quality of the cane. Whereas the other reed, not quite as dependent on the quality of the cane as long as it's hard, but it doesn't have fine qualities. And we're looking for a finer quality in the reed. I'm going to clip it. A little bit more. very close. It's crowing about a C. I'm just going to try to introduce a little tone, make it sound a little nicer, and that will be that. The reed is pretty much done. And it's, has more to do with the cane, staying closer to the tip. These are lighter tips, lighter reeds. You can scrape the end with this type of cane and this kind of reed. It works well. I'll add a little more tone. We don't go so much in the back, but we can go right in this area, and that usually helps. So this is what we have. Not as much out of the back. More contingent on the blending of the reed. Just a little bit more, just a little more, because I like to feel a certain way. And with this style reed too, you can really help its articulation right in this area where I am right here. See, right in there. And do not go off the end, but right in this area really helps with the tone and articulation of the reed. The quality of the articulation is really quite nice. The tone, you can go right in this area, but you got to be very careful. And I don't like to go too far in this area with this kind of reed because it just sets it off. I think that's looking pretty good. Not a lot of definition, but more blended. And that's how this reed has to be with the softer cane. I think I'll clip it. Yeah, it's nice. Just clip it, and I think we'll be fine. This reed, it works better, when you play excerpts like that, because it does more what you want it to do. Because you just add a little air, and it'll do what you want. Whereas, when you have that resistant reed, you can't really get as much subtleties out of it in phrasing, short little phrases, because it requires so much air just to get it off the ground. So let me try it again. I think it's where I want it. See, there's no artifacts with this kind of reed. There's no hissing, and there's no scratching, and there's no this and that and the other. I mean, it just plays. It just plays everything you want it to. It plays beautifully. Of course, it's my gouge, my shape, which helps quite a bit in a way that, makes it work this way. Now you can see this is more blended. I stayed toward the tip of the reed. There's more of a blend region there. I didn't really scrape out of the back except close to the back of the heart. There's more of a straight taper. It's what you need to do with softer cane, weaker gouge, right? Weaker setup. This, on the other hand, is more that you need to do with harder cane, stronger gouge. It needs to be more defined in the back, in the very back. And it needs to be more defined in the tip. And there's very little blend area. It's just mostly definition. I hope that helps you. This is the final in that three-part series, and it's really to show you what to do with hard cane, which is on the left, as opposed to soft cane, which is on the right. Good luck with that.